Hey everybody, this is Sherry with CPR, Craft, Pray, Repeat, and I'm here today with an image from Imagine That Digistamp called Ellie's Pumpkin Costume. And I'm going to start out by putting all of the colors that I use on the screen for you. And I'm using all of my warm grays because I'm coloring an elephant. And I don't know. I only have the warm and the cool grays. So to me, the cool grays would have made her look like she was either metal or dead. So dead, and I'm like all hunched over, like I just croaked. I don't know where my head is. You know, it's a good thing this isn't like two cameras looking at me because I wouldn't want you guys to see some of the goofy things I do. It's like I talk to you and I talk with my hands and my face and my whole body, and all you hear is my voice. I don't know why I do it. So, but we're just gonna go ahead and keep coloring. And so I go ahead and I put my darkest. I didn't want her real dark, which is why I didn't put my base color first. I wanted her to be a real pale gray. And so I'm working on where I put the darkest in the mid-tone, and then I put my lightest right there because when her trunk comes up, that's where the lightest color will be, and I wanted them to meet. So that's why I did it the way I did it, you know, instead of a straight line down the center of her head, because I figured her little hat would be casting a shadow. So that's why I did that. And I got lazy and took off the other cap and just used the broad tip to go over everything. And I'm just going to be finishing up um, my warm grays 0, 2, and 4 here to do the rest of her feet. And then we're going to move on to the bottoms, little bottom parts of her feet, and I darkened them up with a W3, 4, and 5. Didn't want them too dark, so I just went a little above what I had already been using. I still want it all to kind of blend and mesh. So when I do alter the warm grays, I just go up like one number. And like here I go up to the toes, so I go up from a 3, 4, and 5 to a 4, 5, and 6. So, you know, it's not such a stark change, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And I also have a code, guys. It's Sherry, SHERRY 15, all in caps. And if you put that in at Imagine That Digistamp, you can get a 15% off any $5 purchase. So I'll make sure I put a link in the description box, and I'll remember to put the code again down there, but I do show it a couple times through the video. And here I just use my R20 for my ears and my blush. Go over it again with my W1. And now I'm going to start on my pumpkin. And this is where in the past I tend to forget, and I was so tickled that I remembered this time. I'm like, look at me. I go and I do my base coat. All right, I put that down first because I want it to be nice and bright. But I needed to remember to take and do each like slice or each little hump, however you want to call it, individually. Because if I didn't, I would have had each piece would have just been dark on the outside, and it just would have made its way lighter, and it still would have been round. It still would have had the appearance of a round, but I wanted each slice to appear as if it were its own little round individual piece. So you'll see that I put the darkest on the edges of or all the slices, and then the mid-tone, and then the lightest. And I still get my round appearance, but each shape also gets its own roundness. And if you'll notice, I took the other end of the cap off. That's because my tip started to look like super wet, and that's when you'll get a bloop of ink come out on your project. But if you take the other end of the cap off, it kind of equalizes the pressure, and then you don't get that big old blump that can happen if, you know, bloop, and that like ruins your project and breaks your heart and all this stuff all at the same time. So if you notice that the tip of your marker is looking like really, really wet and saturated, take that other tip off, and that will, it usually takes care of the problem. I don't have, usually I just can, you'll notice the color of the tip right away. It just seems to lighten up, just the wetness, you can see the wetness disappear, like the alcohol on the paper. You can see it disappear. It kind of does the same thing when you take the other end of the tip off, or the other end of the marker off. And here I'm just finishing up her little hat, and I did the same thing with each of the little slices up on top. And here are the leaves, and I'm back to my favorite dark deep red combination. I live in Florida, and I miss the changing of the seasons so much. I grew up in West Virginia, and I remember my pastor saying, "Sherry, the leaves change down here too." And I said, "I don't consider turning brown and dying changing colors. I can get brown anywhere. I want the pretty oranges and reds that I see up home and that I miss so much." One year I was so homesick, my mom sent me a box of leaves, and I was like, woohoo, you thought I'd hit the mother lode. Now here I'm trying to make a mask. Now this was two-way glue from Stampin' Up, but they have a brand called Zig, and when it's blue it's permanent, but when you let it dry it's repositionable. So I just covered it up, scooted it away, and to let it dry, and I'm using my EK Tools pen to trace around all of the lines again, because I colored over them, so they're not going to be as intense. And there's a dual tip on this pen as well, and you don't see it, but I do end up going over the words "Hey there pumpkin" as well, because I will be inking around around the image, so I go over it at the end. But I'm off camera. I don't know what my problem is lately. For some reason, I'm struggling with putting my camera back in the same spot. I don't know what my deal is. But, and usually most people would do this first. Of course, not me. Got to go butt backwards. For some reason, I didn't get the Salty Ocean in, but here I am using the peeled paint. And then I realized that it wasn't as dark as I wanted. So I'm going to come back in with Forest Moss and go over the green again, because to me fall is deep, rich colors that are just bright. I can't tell the specific shades of the orange or specific shades of the red, and if you put them together, I couldn't tell you which was which. But I remember, growing up and looking into the hills and seeing those beautiful colors, and that meant squirrel season. That meant deer season wasn't far off. That meant Thanksgiving was coming. And I miss that time so much. And so here I just used a cat scrappiness border I just got that set of dies I won from Maria Russell. And I tell you what, I love them. They just seem to make a huge difference in, the way your card looks. And if you notice, I just put the black glaze on her eyes. It just like brings her to life. I love it. And here I'm just using a Recollections leaf punch and some different pieces of scraps that I had to punch out some leaves. And I'm going to use my art glitter glue, which is my favorite glue. And I will put a link for that in the description box. And I just wanted to put a few leaves around her. And I add a third one to her little hat. And put a little cluster there at the bottom below the words, and I like what it added to the card. Now here I am using my ATG, which ran out of tape, so I quickly switched to my favorite glue again, my art glitter glue. And I just cover it up, and I just trim up anywhere I didn't cut perfectly, and just trim that off. And then I use the carved pumpkin, and I get out that white piece of laminated paper. I seem to do better with that. Then I don't get a harsh, I don't know how to explain it. I saw someone else do it, and I thought, well, I'll try it. And And I did, and I love it. I mean, you don't waste ink because you can still pick up off of your laminated paper. I can't explain it. You guys need to try it because it really works great. And that is my new blending tool from Shell, who is Little Acres Creations here on YouTube, and I will put a link for hers in the description box below. Alright guys, I hope you liked this video. Remember to practice your CPR, craft, pray, repeat. Thanks for visiting me today, and happy crafting. Bye!